The Nigeria Free Zone Scheme was established by Decree 63 of 1992 to spur industrial growth and development as a way of encouraging the export of goods manufactured in the country. The scheme was designed to attract investment and boost the industrialization policy of the government. It was also to create employment and attract technology to Nigeria from other countries. It was the need to stimulate industrial growth that led the federal government to explore the idea of export processing zones in line with international best practices at the time. The zones were designed as special territories within the country, but exempted totally or in part from national regulations related to trade, finance, and other economic activities. As part of its commitment to stimulating economic activity and growth, the federal government created incentives to attract and support private sector investment into it. These incentives broadly cover immigration, tax, customs, and other industry-specific incentives. The Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, Niyi Adebayo, estimates the cumulative investment in the free zone within its 30-year operation at $20 billion. He described the scheme as one of the prime initiatives of the federal government to diversify Nigeria's economic base in order to achieve the vision of growing the economy, creating jobs, and generating wealth. Since inception, the scheme has attracted significant foreign direct investment, created hundreds of thousands of direct and indirect jobs with the attendant skills transfer, as well as generated revenue for government.
The concept of the EPZ program is a deliberate attempt, always and in all countries, to fast-track industrial development in such countries that introduce the scheme. And that was what Nigeria did by promulgating then a decree became an Act 63 of 1992 that established the Nigerian Export Processing Zones Authority, which had the mandate to establish, to license, and to operate zones. And that was what we started with. Most things new come with their teeth and problems. We had ours. It was a new scheme in the country. Various agencies were not informed about the scheme. The publicity was small and narrow. But then, key agencies were quickly brought on board, like the customs, the immigration, and the central bank especially, because the scheme allows investors to get as much of soft landing as they can possibly get in coming to an environment to set up any business. And so, if they bring their money and they want to take all their money out, no objection. If they are bringing their workers, they are given the requisite visas that they need to come in. If they want to bring in machinery and raw materials for their production, the custom is there to give duty waivers, because that is what entices investors to come into an environment. Remove as much as possible all the obstacles that will make it difficult for them to come in.
Because we adopted the public-private sector partnership with interest, we succeeded. We were able to recruit more than 65 oil and gas companies into the free zone during our first year of operation. Because of the persistency and resiliency of my management team and staff, including our consultants, were able to lay a solid foundation, which my successors are able to expand the free zone to what you see today, because the free zone is an incubator that brings our business activities.
The federal government went a step further to establish the Oil and Gas Free Zones Authority in 1996 to increase the positive impact of oil and gas on the economy. It was also to domicile oil and gas services that were performed outside the country.
A few months after I took office as the MD, we had a stakeholders forum, and at that forum we presented a roadmap. In that roadmap we had a number of goals, and the principal goals in the roadmap was how to attract foreign direct investments. And to do that, of course, we also had the goal on how to improve the business environment and motivate workers. We even also had the goal of financial independence, because for us, if the authority became financially independent, it would enhance professionalism on the part of workers. To improve the business environment, we took a number of steps. One was to ensure that in terms of service delivery, our clients' licenses find that there's a difference between operating in the free zone environments
with trade
territory, that is operating outside the free zone. So we came up with a number of timelines.
Since its establishment in 1992, the Nigeria Free Zone Scheme has evolved from being run by the government and primarily focused on export. It now operates as free zones, services, and access to the domestic economy as its prominent features. It has also drawn private sector investment into zone development, making the zones more commercially viable.
The ultimate goal of the scheme is to contribute efficiently and effectively to the industrialization of Nigeria through the attraction of foreign investments, including local ones, to a first area where people can be producing in a very efficient and competitive manner. So the scheme itself is to attract not just investments, but also to help in the industrialization policy, as well as to create employment and also to attract technology to Nigeria from other countries. So the whole idea is to have factories setting up in Nigeria rather than setting up somewhere else, and we need to give them such incentives to be able to make them leave their areas or locate in Nigeria instead of other countries.
The oil and gas free zone started with one free zone in River State, particularly Oni. But over the last 20 years, we have developed into having about 8 free zones across the country. This authority was called Oil and Gas Free Zone because it was only Oni. But we are now sending a bill to change it to Oil and Gas Free Zones Authority because we have now developed into having several other zones. We have 2 zones in Lagos. We have Best Tap and Eco Support. Then we have another one in Akwa Ibom State, which is Liberty Free Zone. We have Brass in Bayelsa State. We have another one in Delta State. We have another additional one in One Ekpokri. There are 3 other new applications awaiting presidential approval for the declaration of free zone in various other parts of this country. Once these are approved by the president and declared as free zone, by the end of this year or middle of next year, we'll be having 10 several free zones across the country, and that is a huge success. In addition to that, right now, there are several applications from different investors, both within and outside the country, trying to come in and either invest or apply for declaration of certain location in the country as free zone. So we are moving fast.
Increased private sector investment translated to better facilities and a wider range of services, making the zones more attractive as investment destinations. The managements of the authorities have evolved in the process too. They have learned better ways of achieving the goals set by the government while supporting the private sector initiatives. This is done with proper handshakes with stakeholder agencies like the Nigeria Immigration Service, NIS, the Nigeria Customs Service, NCS, the Federal Inland Revenue Service, FIRS, and the Nigeria Ports Authority, NPA. Other agencies involved are the Department of State Service, DSS, Standards Organization of Nigeria, SON, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, and the Nigeria Police Force. The zone authorities are now focusing on providing an enabling environment, critical trade and business infrastructure, along with other innovative ideas to boost economic growth and development. They are also moving towards incorporating the digital economy and virtual zones.
We need to understand this strategy for economic development and industrialization utilized by most countries in Europe, in Asia, and also recently in Africa, of course, to a small extent. The scheme has been effectively utilized in places like China, and according to UNCTAD, we have a little bit about 5,300 economic free zones or free zone schemes all over the world. It won't surprise you to note that over 1,500 of that is located in China, and you can see the effect on the economy and production level that we get out of China. For us in Africa, we're still below 300 of such schemes in Africa. Nigeria has about 50, 44 under NEPSA, and the rest under oil and gas sector. And that's following Kenya. Kenya has 66 free zones, and Egypt has about 36. And of course, the rest of Africa put together, we all have about 200 plus compared to what China has, with similar population for Africa. But with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement that we're having now, more countries in Africa are beginning to look at the scheme as a possible way of addressing their competitiveness.
There will be transfer of technology. When you bring expatriates or expats from other countries who are coming here to invest, of course, they will need Nigerian labor. And this Nigerian labor will now be trained to acquire such skills that these expatriates come along with them.
The growth and successes of the last 30 years notwithstanding, the mandate remains clear for the management of these institutions.
For us in Nigeria, we will say yes, it started quite early. Whether we've done well, it's for us to actually assess ourselves vis-a-vis what others have done within the same period of time. 1992 it looks like yesterday, but 30 years is a long time for us to be able to get our act together. It's not all sad stories, but we also have some successes there. Within that period, we've been able to put together 2 public zones, and while we've grown from 0 to 44 under NEPSA and the rest under oil and gas free zone. So we have some top-rated free zones in Nigeria comparable to any part of the world. If you have been to the Lekki axis, then you have the Lagos Port, Lagos free zone, you have the Dangote free zone, you have the Alaro free zone, and the Lagos area. Then we talk about the Niger Dock and the Ladog. And in other parts of the country, we have free zones in Delta State, we have in Kano, we have in Calabar, we have in Jigawa, we have in Ondo State. We are creating new ones in Ilorin. We are creating new free zones in Delta as well as Ekiti State. So we've had some successes, but it could be better in terms of infrastructural development, especially the outside infrastructure, which is not within the mandate of NEPSA. But for those things that are within the mandate of NEPSA, I think we can say kudos to those people who have been managing the free zone in the past 30 years. Well, of course, we could do more.
Looking at the history of the evolution of free zones in Nigeria, one can see it clearly. To be specific on oil and gas free zone, over the last 9 years, there is foreign direct investment coming into Nigeria, and that is so great. So that's a major landmark achievement. Secondly, no less than 100,000 people, Nigerians, have been employed under oil and gas free zone over the period under review, and that's also huge. In addition to a number of Nigerians that were trained in various aspects of technology. Recently, or in the last 4 years, the Oil and Gas Free Zone Authority has been remarkable in being awarded because of its hard work, because of its transparency, because of the ease of doing business. We have been able to win presidential award, first in 2018, and then subsequently 19, 20, 21, and 22, we have become third. We win the third position in all the MDS in Nigeria in terms of transparency and ease of doing business. One of the major challenges of investors in this country or in the world over is the ability to create an enabling environment that will make business very easy to do. And that is what Oil and Gas Free Zone Authority stands for.
Running the zones in the last 3 decades has had its own challenges.
The scheme so far has been able to employ over 100,000 Nigerians directly and much more than that indirectly. But we still think we've not done as much as we ought to, because that kind of scheme should be employing much more than that. So with support from all the stakeholders, an improvement of our processes, an attraction of more investments, we hope to be able to achieve much more.
There is inadequate knowledge of what free zones are, both within and outside the country. So to go forward on this major problem, we have to step up action to mobilize, to enlighten people, to organize talk shops in different parts of the country and different parts of the world to showcase what free zones mean in the world and what free zone means particularly in Nigeria, and what we have available that will attract other people from outside the country to come and invest.
The way forward is for people to have an understanding of what the scheme stands for, especially government departments that have a belief that it's still part of what they should have an oversight over. I've always asked people to read our act, read the law that established the free zone. The free zone is supposed to be outside the scheme of normal things that wouldn't allow business to thrive. It's supposed to create that kind of business climate that is very, very attractive to investors. It's supposed to cut processes. It's supposed to stop the issues of multiplicity of taxation. It's supposed to have the necessary infrastructure in place. It's supposed to have the kind of security that investors want. And that is why we believe that getting everybody on board to understand the scheme is very important for the scheme to be able to survive.
Despite these challenges, the cooperation and support of stakeholder agencies have ensured that the scheme is highly successful. These agencies have also enjoyed an increase in the revenue accruing to them.
Over the years, we have done quite the deeds. We have done our deeds. We are there to ensure that goods that are imported into the free zones are escorted safely and on time. We are also there to make sure that the investors and their investments are secure. We are collaborating with the newly established security agencies established by NEBSA recently, and I think we are doing a good job doing that.
The OSS security-wise, intelligence-wise also oversees it. So continuously we collaborate, we partner, we liaise, we synergize with the different authorities, leaderships of the free zones.
Operators in the free zones are ordinarily exempt from paying taxes, direct taxes. Albeit, there are consequential revenue arising from these entities. For example, the individual taxes to the employees, the suppliers who are supplying the entities in these schemes are taxpayers. So you see majorly is indirect contribution to the revenue profile, and not directly from those entities themselves, but they are like a catalyst to give us that wider effect, widening the economy and bringing in more people into the economy who are taxpayers, but not them directly.
As the Nigeria Free Zone scheme looks back over its 30 years of operation, the authorities are immensely grateful to the federal government, our stakeholder agencies, our private sector development partners, and all free zone enterprises for their support. The Nigeria Free Zone scheme looks forward to a prosperous future, one with mutual benefits to all stakeholders and Nigeria as a whole.
May I, on behalf of the entire management and officers of the Nigerian Customs Service, extend my warmest congratulations to the Managing Director and the entire staff of the Nigeria Export Processing Zones Authority on the 30th anniversary of the Free Trade Zone Scheme in Nigeria. Over the years, your organization has achieved tremendously, especially in the areas of attraction of foreign direct investments, generation of employment, increasing foreign exchange earnings, enhancing technology transfer, cooperation among stakeholders, and the encouragement of scale acquisition in the free trade zones.
On behalf of the Executive Chairman, the Board, and Management of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, I want to congratulate all our heads of authorities within the scheme, the NEPSA, the Oil and Gas Free Zone, for this successful 30 years of contributing to the economic growth and development of Nigeria. We wish them many more years of prosperous, thriving economy, thriving businesses in the zones as they go on. And we pledge that the service is always at hand to contribute in whatever measure that is required to make the scheme and the agencies much more successful. Congratulations as we rejoice with you.
On behalf of the Director General, Department of State Services, Alhaji Yusuf Magaji Bichi, CFR, FWC, the management and the entire staff of the service wish the economic trade zones hearty cheers at a time like this for all of them singularly and collectively. It's a moment of celebration of great achievements in implementing the entirety of Nigeria's economic policies, interests and objectives as regards the trade free zones.
I'm elated to be part of the scheme, and I must say kudos to those who thought it out in the first place 30 years ago to put together the act, the enabling law. Kudos to also all the managing directors, the leaders, the directors, and the staff of the scheme in the past 30 years that have brought us up to this point. I wish everybody well. I welcome you to be part of our celebration, and I know that together we can actually make Nigeria truly great. We are capable of doing it, and this scheme can really be very, very important in the scheme of industrialization of the country.
This is a very good opportunity for Nigeria to host Africa and then to host the world. A number of people are coming from outside Africa to join us to see what we have to showcase in the celebration of 30 years of social prisons in Nigeria and the 7th annual general meeting of African prisons. Let me first of all welcome them and wish them a very happy and very successful stay in Abuja, and will avail them with what we have in our various prisons across the country, even though it will be difficult for us to take everybody to look at physically what we have across the country, but we have prepared a virtual tour for all what we do in our prisons, and it will be shown on various screens during the process of the meetings and the celebrations. So I invite our guests to stay with us throughout the celebration and the meeting so that they will see what we have in Nigeria. And I once again welcome everybody to Nigeria, and I wish them very, very happy stay. Nigeria, a great country. Nigeria, the greatest black nation in the world. And Nigeria, a very safe, let me say once again, that Nigeria is safe for our guests, and they will be with them throughout their stay in Nigeria. Thank you, and you are welcome.